Hey folks, Arlyeon here. Welcome to another episode of Crit Hit vs. Death... Wait. I've been told people are wanting a review? Alright, fine. Let's strap ourselves in and get ready for a critical review of White Rabbit's Death's Gambit. To give a brief TLDR, Death's Gambit is a 2D Metroidvania, albeit one which also notably draws inspiration both mechanically and narratively from Souls-likes. Players are thrust into the role of a knight named Soren, who was a member of an expedition sent to investigate and secure the source of immortality at the heart of Cyrodiil. Given Soren starts the game as a gangrenous-looking corpse, it's suffice to say it didn't really go well. Still, he's been given a second lease on unlife, courtesy of Death, who seems to have his own stake at the matter at hand. As far as storylines go, Death's Gambit starts off solid, and didn't overly disappoint me as the story progressed. The delivery of the narrative vis-a-vis voiced cutscenes or NPC dialogue managed to help get me invested in the world, and further intrigued me as to what else was to come. There was also some side stories / characters I wanted to know more about, but a mysterious rash of murders that happened in my hub town due to a certain scaly fuck prevented that. I'm going to murder him in future playthroughs to see what happens. Admittedly, because of the non-linear nature of the game, it did mean that figuring out all the pieces of events could be a bit confusing at times, since the order of scenes you end up having displayed could end up feeling a bit jumbled, which was further muddled by the fact that certain cutscenes unlock as you die and seem tied to the area you die in, which also means if you do too good, you'll end up missing out on some of those pieces. Still, the game's writing was generally enjoyable and managed to tie together an overall sense of melancholy with some really silly snarky moments so it didn't get overbearing. Plus, Death is a sarcastic git and I love it. My only real gripe is a certain contradictory plot element that occurs midway through the game and which had me more or less wondering if it's chalked up to the narrative equivalent of, it was swamp gases. So, there's a bit to unpack in Death's Gambit, as while it does seek to pay homage to its Souls-like inspiration, it still does provide its own innovations upon the tried-and-true formula. First off, the character generation does influence more than your initial equipment and stat allotments, as each class has a passive talent that's unique to it, and which tends to influence their playstyles, at times fairly heavily. There's also a few neat elements, like one class that can equip items with half the stat requirement, and another one that has access to more save shrines than others. The formula of slash, roll, block, and parry should still feel familiar to Souls veterans, alongside some weapon class specific special moves to allow for more varied violencing. Admittedly, my own experiences leaned more towards the casting side of the game for my first playthrough, which called for a bit more of a deliberate approach given most spells leave the user vulnerable for a considerable time in tandem with a hefty soul energy cost. Like MP, except that it builds with combos and degrades over time. Although these downsides meant more often than not, I found myself setting things on fire and then jump attacking them with a magical katana for simplicity and safety's sake, despite having 9 options for mystical murdering. And it doesn't help that the magical katana doesn't get weapon class specific special moves. And honestly, that comes down to the fact that whilst the game does manage to provide an altogether engrossing adventure which sees you exploring its various regions without holding your hand about what direction you need to go into, and does a pretty good job of motivating you to search out its secrets, it also happens to be unrepentantly hard. Whether it be vis-a-vis monomaniacally murderous minions, diabolical death traps, or just the game's various bosses, you can expect to disintegrate as easily as a wet paper bag, especially as you get into the later portions of the game. Anyway, somewhere along this point, you'll discover the cost of dying in Death's Gambit, and it's not your experience, oh no. It's your Phoenix Feathers, your Estus Flask equivalents, as each time you die, you lose one of your feathers to mark where your corpse is, until you shimmy your way to the location of your sad ending, or spend experience to retrieve it safely. Admittedly, the feathers are a fairly neat touch, since not only are there different kinds with their own unique upsides and downsides, you can also choose to sacrifice them to save shrines, reducing the amount of healing flash you have available to yourself in exchange for additional damage. Alternatively, you could just do what I did upon first reaching the hub town and throw yourself against the bulwark boss until you partially fill a room with a literal staircase made out of your own corpses. Because I clearly didn't take the hint on, maybe I should find the blacksmith first because better gear would be nice and my inventory is filling up. Then again, I also decided it would be a wise idea to take on the game's heroic boss battles the absolute first moment one appeared, and one out of sheer, stupid persistence. To give context, the heroic boss battles are absurdly ramped up versions of the normal boss battles, which not only have increased health and attack, they have elements added to their fights which vary from painful to lethal as fuck. And who am I kidding? At the start of the game, they're all pretty fatal, and the ones you face later on just get more so. If you can clear a heroic battle, you're probably able to clear most of the boss fights in the game. Mind you, they are a repeatable source of experience and also happen to give some very neat rewards alongside bragging rights. And by bragging rights, I mean achievements. Speaking of bragging rights, not only does the game possess the time-honored tradition of an even harder New Game Plus mode, it also includes a permadeath mode. That's right, you can literally take the plot-related contract that Death gives you and flip him off and tear it up, turning the game into a nightmarish test of endurance where your first mistake may end up being your last. Thankfully, it is not something you can do by accident at all. Now, when it comes to all things audio, Death's Gambit is on point. Even the game's introductory theme is solid, managing to introduce a quiet sense of sorrow as it introduces players to its world. And the rest of the soundtrack moving forward just does an excellent job of evoking certain feelings as you navigate the various environments and encounters. The way the Thalamus theme elicited a sense of awe and dread the first time I heard it start up was absolute perfection and had me hunting down the OST after I finished the game. And the music isn't the only thing I have to gush about. As noted earlier, Death's Gambit has a fair amount of voice acting in it, which I actually found myself looking forward to as I interacted with the various NPCs. So many moments in the game found themselves accentuated by being able to hear the desperation or sorrow in a character's voice, while other times the humor helped to abate some of the game's grimness.
Stay your distance, cowering.
So normally my focus on a game's graphics are somewhat in line with if they impede or enhance gameplay, but I do have to take a moment here to say that Death's Gambit looks really good, and it's rife full of varied enemies and environments, just all done with carefully crafted sprite work. So, when it comes to the final TLDR for Death's Gambit, I can definitely say I didn't regret my time playing it. I appreciated the challenge it provided, and though I may have to warn some people, it is very friggin' hard, and I look forward to delving deeper into a more physically oriented build. There are points where the game feels like it could have used a bit more polish, casting j'accuse, but in the same breath, it also received a lot of love in a recent balance update patch. It is 1.1 as of this review, and one of the things it addressed was making dodges smoother and more useful. Whilst the rogue bosses did feel a bit clusterfucky and they were merciless with the mechanics they were teaching, they also provided some of the more intense do-or-die moments of gaming in my recent memory. If the developers do continue to work at the game as they currently are and make good on the promises of just more refinements and content to come, I can certainly see this game being a crit hit, but for the moment, I can fairly say it's still a solid hit. Anyways, that's all from me, folks. If you've lasted until the credits, I definitely appreciate you hearing me out, and I'd love to hear your own thoughts on the game, and whether you agree or disagree with my assessment in the comments section. If you want to see more reviews, developer interviews, or any other indie or tabletop gaming related items, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can get alerts. Other than that, I'll catch you folks later. See ya! There.